When it's dark, look on the bright side. When it rains, wait on the sunshine. Everybody likes getting them good vibes, 'cause everybody's got a heart on the inside. We could take all the hard lessons, that little loving, and turn them into blessings. Don't complicate it, keep it simple. Just work hard and be nice to people. Oh, just work hard.
Welcome to this week's episode of
Hey, I think we're good here.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Jackson Metakekia.
And I'm Matt West, and we're here getting to know the sport of volleyball through the life experiences our guests have to share with us. Come take a listen. Today's episode stars all-time great Cardinal, Cassidy Lichtman. Cassidy discusses her current endeavors as a part of the nonprofit pathsports.org, her struggle with chronic leg pain since the age of 9 years old, her upbringing as a gym rat in San Diego, her time as a multi-position athlete in a time of specialization, both at Stanford and the USA Gym, her brief time as a coach in which she won a national championship with Stanford, and her reasoning for coming out of retirement to play for the new Athletes Unlimited Sports League. Check it out.
Don't complicate it, keep it simple. Just work hard and be nice to people. Whoa, just work hard and be nice to people. Just work hard and be nice. So keep your eyes to the skies and your feet on the
Hello.
What's up, guys?
Hey, what's happening?
You know, just hanging out in the middle of a pandemic.
Cassidy, this is Jackson. Jackson, Cassidy.
Jackson?
Hey, Cassidy. Do you go by Cassidy or Cass?
Either one.
Either one, you don't mind?
I don't mind.
Cool. Well, nice to meet you.
You too.
What part of the world are you in right now?
I'm in San Diego.
Oh, sick. Hometown.
Hometown.
Very nice.
Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
If just like a brief intro, because I only gave you like a little glimpse of like what we're attempting to do. So essentially, we just want people to like know who you are through your life's journeys and experiences and stories that you have to share with us. And we use volleyball as our main medium because we're both volley dorks and we love hearing like how people are or who you are. And so we just want to give our audience a chance to like relate and understand like, oh, like this is just a normal person like us and these are the struggles that people go through. And yeah, so it's literally just us talking and we just ask you questions and you tell us about how great you are and we just keep going.
That sounds good.
Well,
I can do that.
well, let's start with how exactly did you get into volleyball? You're from Poway?
I'm from Poway. I was born here in San Diego, but we actually moved to Texas when I was like 3 months old. So I lived in Houston until I was 7. I come from a volleyball family. So my mom played and then became a coach. My dad played a little bit, and I have an older brother. And so when I was born, basically, I was brought into a gym and told to entertain myself while my mom was coaching. You know, she would bring my brother and me to the gym with her. And I'm gonna just move. Apparently, there's gonna be noise outside my window. And so she would bring us to the gym with her, and you know, if my dad was working or whatever, and so we'd have to entertain ourselves for a couple hours, and we didn't bring like toys or anything with us. It was like, here's a ball, go play. So that's like some of my earliest memories are just being in a gym and you know, learning how to pass to myself or pass like up against the wall or whatever it was.
Was that mostly in club gyms or was your mom coaching at different places?
Yeah, she coached. She ran a club in Texas. It was called Westside. It basically was one that became Texas Tornadoes. And so coached like all the way till my brother and I kind of got old enough to start playing, and then she took a little bit of time off so she could watch us. Never coached me like on an official team, but kind of taught us the basics from a really young age.
How old were you when you started playing club volleyball?
10. I played on my first club team in 5th grade, and I wasn't like, I think they were just, my parents were letting me go to tryouts. I wanted to play volleyball forever, and finally they let me go to tryouts, but it was supposed to just be like experience tryouts, so next year you can play. And then, since I'd actually been playing, like there's not a lot of 12-year-olds who know how to play volleyball, so they put me on a team, and were like, start. And it was like, I was obsessed. It was my favorite thing.
I wonder, Jackson, how many coaches' kids have we had on?
A good number. I think we're on a trend here.
Yeah, for sure. We're like, our guests have this tendency of saying like, yeah, like my mom, she just took me to the gym and said, there's a wall, figure it out.
Exactly. I mean, gym rats turn into volley nerds to turn into decent players.
100%. 100%. Like now, just hearing that small snippet, it totally makes sense in like who you are as a volleyball player as you get older too.
Yeah.
100%. So then, from my brief research, aka Jason Mansfield, he told me that you had like an unfortunate incident that happened with your leg when you were younger.
Yes. So right before, first of all, I love Jason Mansfield. He's amazing. So right before I started playing club, I was 9 and essentially like woke up one morning and couldn't walk. I have like a nerve disorder in my leg, which we didn't know at the time. So I just woke up and was in pain and like nobody knew why. And so, got a pair of crutches, started going to the doctors to try to figure out why there was this kind of like shooting pain going up my shin, and just nobody could figure it out. So I ended up being on crutches for probably just over 6 months, and they kept trying like new treatments, and they eventually diagnosed me with this nerve disorder that they were like, there's no cure for this, but here's a bunch of treatments we can try, none of which worked. So essentially they were like, you're probably not going to be able to walk again in your life. Which like, how do you, as an adult, I think that would be difficult for me to comprehend, but as a 9-year-old, it's like, how do you even begin to think about that? And so I denied it, and was like, no, that's not what my life's going to be like. So I decided that I was going to start walking again. Did not plan it out. Was not like, hey, let's work with my physical therapist to like progress up to it. My entire plan was, I'm just not going to not bring my crutches to school on the last day.
I mean, you were 9 years old, so that makes sense.
Yeah, tons of planning. Super smart. So I went to my last day of 4th grade without crutches. Kind of hobbled around the day, but it was like the first time I put my foot on the ground in half a year. And so I kept going to physical therapy, kind of relearned how to walk. The problem was I didn't actually get better. Like the pain was still there and then getting worse because I was walking on it, but I was moving again. And in my mind, I was like, listen, if I can walk, I can play volleyball, because I've been waiting for this for a long time.
100%.
And so it was probably only, 4 or 5 months later that I'm at tryouts for my first team. And 12 under volleyball is like not the most athletic endeavor, but still, it was a big jump up. So that kind of continued to be a problem throughout my career, because I just kept playing and kept going to higher and higher levels, but there was never actually like a medical solution to the fact that it hurt. And the more physical it got, the more it hurt. So that was kind of just this ongoing sort of thing I had to wrestle with as I went through high school and then college and national team and all that.
And I'm suspecting it still hurts. Does it still hurt right now as we speak?
It still hurts as we speak. This is 21 years later.
Wow. You're a trooper.
Yes.
You must really love volleyball.
I do really love volleyball.
So then so you're 10 years old. How'd your first season go? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I I remember like I loved practice and playing. I was super into it. You know, we'd go on water breaks and I was the kid like still out there like trying to get my coach to play one-on-one or something short court. Like it was so fun to just finally be the one out in the court. I had spent my whole, 10 years up to that being the one on the sidelines, like trying to get out to play with my mom's teams. And finally it was my turn. I also remember the rest of the girls like not being at that level. They were very much like, let's get matching bows and socks and, like plan our cheers out. And I was a very serious athlete. And so there was a little bit of a mismatch. My second year, I think I got with, it was some of the same girls, but I got with some more that, really, really wanted to play. And a bit of a tougher coach and all that. And so I think the second year was better than the first one. But still, like in terms of the volleyball, was just super excited to get to go out and like play for real.
So I have a question for you, and like from a coaching perspective, I'm curious. Do you remember if like, did everybody have a position even at that young of an age, or was it just like, we're bumping to two, you're setting to the middle, and you hit it if you can?
Totally. We played what I would call a 6-6. So everybody rotates around and right front sets. So everybody played everything. My next year when I went up to like 13s, we started having positions. But yeah, that first year, everybody did everything, which I think is fantastic.
For sure.
You never know, what kids are going to end up being. Like I was always, my first few years, one of the smallest ones in the team, and grew later. And so like having those kind of fundamentals early on, I think was huge.
So you played U13 and you were 12, or were you 11?
Yeah, I was 11 turning 12. So I was playing 1 year up.
Okay. Did they give you a position, or were you still positionless? And technically you had a position, but it was like, we're going to let Cass roam.
I, at that age, was mostly like a DS setter. Again, I was pretty small, which I think helped me a ton as I got older because I started out small. So they were like, okay, pass and set, like probably don't let her hit too much. Like I learned how, but I wasn't a big banger on those teams. So I think then I was like the ball control kind of player in whatever position that was going to be. And that was at least until I was, 14 and 15 when I started growing a little bit and being able to hit more.
What club did you play for?
San Diego Volleyball Club.
Okay.
That's your mom's club, right?
Yeah, she just retired actually, but she's been running it. She didn't run at the time when we started there, but probably like halfway through my career, she started working for the club.
She just retired, man. Congratulations to her.
Great timing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, great timing.
Exactly.
So then, oh man, your career is like, it's so wild. It's so wild because it's so fluid. And like you did so many different things. You just did what you were asked. You're like, okay, I'm just gonna do my best to be exceptional at this. Did you recognize you were gonna have to do that at like a pretty early age, or is that something that happened in college?
It was something I did at an early age. I think I probably would have guessed that it would have gotten more stable as I got into college, and it didn't. But like I said, I started out small, grew a little bit. So I was a setter kind of who was hitting for a while. And really what ended up determining a lot of it was just that every team needs passers. Yeah. And so I ended up hitting on a lot of teams as I got older and taller, because they needed me to pass and hit. And so, but in my mind, like I always knew that at the next level, I wasn't going to be that tall. I'm 6 feet, which in high school volleyball is pretty tall, and in D1 college volleyball, not super tall. Yeah. So there were a lot of people who were like, you're not going to be big enough to hit at the next level. And then there were other people who were like, you're not going to be experienced enough to set at the next level because you've been hitting this whole time. And I was like, cool. so I just kind of kept doing both and making sure that I was still getting the reps, setting and passing all of that, knowing that I probably wasn't going to be the most physical wherever I got to next. And so when I started getting recruited, it was a little bit all over the place. You know, I ended up, my top 3 schools were Stanford, Minnesota, and Washington. And Washington wanted me to be a 5'1" setter. Minnesota wanted me to be a 6'2" setter hitter. And Stanford was literally like, we don't really know what we're going to do with you, but you can come. If you know, like that was, I mean, John, you know, legitimately told me, he's like, I don't know exactly what you're going to do, but we think, you know, you're a good volleyball player and we'll give you a scholarship. So I picked that one. And
challenge accepted.
and was like, well, I'll either find a way on the court or I don't, but I'm going to see how good I can be. And so, yeah, my freshman year, I started out as mostly a DS. But I always think, I joke that like my name freshman year was someone, because they'd be like, hey, someone needs to be left front right now. And I'd be like, okay. And they'd be like, oh, someone needs to like set on the B side. I'm like, okay, like someone needs to do, and it was just me. And like one match, I always remember one match I played, we were, you know, it was preseason, we were playing a weaker team, and I played only back row the first set as DS. I played only front row the second set, and then I played all the way around in the third set. And I was like, this is the weirdest. But yeah, I mean, basically at the end of each season, when most people were having their kind of season debrief meetings one-on-one with coaches, mine was usually like, okay, so next year, like you're gonna have to get better at this. Like, okay, sounds good.
Was that ever frustrating for you, like just not knowing what to look forward to and kind of where you're going to be at on the court?
You know, the only time it really was, so my first year as a DS, and then I became a setter, and I'm confident the least experienced setter in the history of the Final Four. I had set a 6'2" for the first half of the season, and then set a 5'1", and it was basically the first time in my life I'd ever set a 5'1", and I did it for like a month and a half, and then it was all of a sudden in the finals. And after that season, I was like, I had put in a ton of work to become a setter, and I was like, okay, I did well enough. Like we got to this point in the season, I was like, now I want to be the best, right? I want to be the best setter in the country. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then I went home for Christmas break and was drawing out like lineups, because that's the kind of volley nerd I am. It was like, what we lost a lot. You know, we lost Feluca and Cynthia Barbosa, and so I'm drawing out like what I think potential lineups are. And I'm looking at them like, crap. I have and so that was the one time where I was like, man, thought I could be really good at this, but it just wasn't going to work. You know, I could see that like literally on paper. And so I had to move to the outside. And the only other thing I think was frustrating was sometimes like I was doing so many things that there's not enough time in practice to practice all of them at the level that I would want to. So, you know, if I'm hitting, I'm like, man, I'm not, you know, setting enough. And if I'm setting, I'm not hitting enough. And when am I going to get my passing reps in? And so there was some of that where I was like, okay, I got to come in, you know, in the morning for half an hour and pass, because I know I'm not going to get enough of that later on in practice. And so there's a little bit of that.
Did you find defense frustrating at all with like switching positions on the court with right, middle, and left?
Not really. I love playing defense, first of all. I mean, right back's the worst, for sure. But, you know, I remember on the national team one time I was talking to Mike Hebert, you know, great legend of a coach, and he was with us on a trip. And we were talking about, you know, whether the libero should play middle or left against a certain team. We hadn't practiced libero middle back. And he's like, if we were just on a playground right now, we would just put the person there who should dig the ball, right? And like nobody would worry about it. And I think I was just used to that, of like, go where you need to go and play the ball. So I never really thought about it as, you know, I need to play this position or be in this spot in the court. It's just like, be where you need to be, see what you need to see, and then go.
Do you feel like that's something that's missing in today's game, with all the specialization that's happening?
Yeah, for sure. It's always been confusing to me because I've always thought about volleyball as this whole thing. Like you can't compartmentalize or separate pieces of it. If I'm passing, then understanding what the setter's job is helps me be a better passer, and the same if I'm hitting or whatever. And so the people who, genuinely only know how to do what they do, it's always confused me a little bit. Or people like in rotations who only know exactly where they're supposed to stand in that rotation.
So crazy.
And don't know how. I mean, and it's not their fault. It's the fault of coaches who are teaching them. But it's never made any sense to me that you can split these things up. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the way that we take 10, 11, and 12-year-olds now and go, okay, you're going to be a middle blocker, and this is what you do. It doesn't leave a lot of room for them to learn, but also like to become a kind of creative and fluid player out on the court and be able to use those skills in different situations. I was actually watching, I was at a tournament like a year or so ago, and this play kept happening over and over again. And I saw it like 3 or 4 times in one day where there would be a free ball. Somebody would be free balling the ball over the net, and it would go like just over the net. And
you think somebody would hit it by the end of the day?
The blocker on the other side would like back up and pass it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you, why would you hit it? Like hit it back in their faces.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever told them like you can hit a free ball, right?
Yeah.
And so they've only been taught things in sequence, like, okay, if somebody overpasses, you can hit it. But if somebody free balls it over on third contact, then you pass it.
For sure.
And so I think there's something missing in the way that we teach things to go, okay, I have this set of skills and tools, and whatever the situation is, like, I'm going to figure out what the best one is to use, as opposed to they told me to do this and then this and then this.
Okay, if you're the volleyball czar for the whole world, at what age do you think we should specialize, like even just positions? Big question.
I mean, but for sure by 14s, I think you have to have some of it. I just wish that we did a better job of at least teaching all the skills, like at least teaching everybody how to pass. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like if you, the way that we take people, we're like, oh, you are a middle or an opposite, and so you're not going to pass anything. Like they don't grow, and all of a sudden they can't play anymore. And so, and it's kind of the opposite with the little ones who, they're out there passing and playing outside, and they're never going to grow. And so it's just, I think learning the fundamentals of all skills at young ages is the most important thing. And then letting them kind of play freely. And at some point you have to put them in 6-on-6 and give them a position, but let them at least play, more than one.
Yeah. Mansfield and I actually talked about that on the last podcast. We were discussing, because when it comes to setters, I don't think some setters are great off 1 foot. Some setters are great off 2 feet. And everybody has their own style, because their biomechanics are just different. Like everybody's just built different, and their touches are just different. And there's all these things that people can and can't do based on just who they are and their personality and the way they perceive life in and of itself. And I was like, so I was saying for setters and he was saying for attackers, just give them an arsenal.
Yeah.
And if they have an arsenal, then at least they can choose what weapon they want to pull. But if you give them one tool, then it's over. That's all they have. They're just one dimensional. And you see a lot of kids, they're opposites in their whole club career, and then all of a sudden they can't kill a ball out of position 1, and somebody's like, okay, now you're gonna have to be a middle. And it's like, man, if you would have just learned how to block out of the middle when you were 15, this would have been a lot easier.
Yeah, and more fun. I mean, it's just to me that's the art of the game, is having that freedom to go, okay, even if I play now, it's just it's so fun to go, okay, I have all of these things at my disposal, and I just get to choose one. It's way more fun than like, let me get set exactly the way they taught me to do it and do it properly. And there's room for discipline and technique and all of that for sure. But I think that is the thing to then build upon and go, okay, now I get to create what I want out on the court.
How did that mentality fit in with USA Volleyball? Because it feels like USA, especially with centers, well, centers and receivers actually, it feels like it's kind of one way, like it's my way or the highway. No, I don't want to throw Karch under the bus. Karch is obviously pretty good. He knows what he's doing, but I see, and this is for a lot of coaches, it's like, hey, you're a good setter, but I think you could be better if you set the way that I'm telling you how to set, or if you pass the way that I'm telling you how to pass. Did you ever like headbutt with people of like, yeah, I mean, that's a good idea, but it's kind of just who I am.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I liked about Karch was that he was always open for the discussion. You know, for me at least, is I felt like I could always say, hey, you know, I think this could work better, or and we might just talk it out, and I might be wrong. But there were definitely times, like I'm remembering 2 times in particular. One, they wanted to change my toss a little bit on my serve, and like not a ton. It was like I like flow a little bit more into my serve and kind of bring the ball from left to right a little, just because that is the natural way that I do it. And one of our coaches wanted me to, you know, be a little bit more rigid and like toss it straight up because that would be a more consistent toss. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll try it. So tried it and like it was not working for me. I just felt like super stiff, and Karch essentially like, hey, try it for a few days. If you don't like it, you know, let's talk about it. I did not like it. And I also felt like it was using technique for technique's sake as opposed to using technique for the result that we wanted. Like they wanted me to have a consistent toss, and my toss was already consistent. It was just not, you know, the process of it was not textbook. And so I kind of expressed that, and he was like, okay, you know, go back to your toss. It's fine.
Sweet.
So that was one of them. And then the other one was we were working on our passing seams, you know, who's going to go deep and short in the seam in passing. And I'm here starting at Pan Am Cup on the outside. I haven't been a 6 rotation outside hitter since high school, but whatever. And so then I play in this tournament. We win a gold medal. And the next summer when 2013 starts and there's a whole new quad and there's whole new people coming in, all of a sudden, like I'm a veteran because I've been in the gym. And so I kind of like snuck my way in and never really had a true tryout in the national team. But like, because I could just be that whoever kind of player, it was like that summer they just specifically needed me to be there, to be whatever it was. So yeah, I think the first time I came into the gym, it was just like, go out and play and don't do anything dumb. And you'll be cool. Like if you can just kind of get into the gym, keep your head down and like do your work. I think, you know, the Lindsey Berg and Logan Tom and Danielle Scott and like the veterans who were all there were just like, okay, like just let that kid, like she just does what she does. Like, I don't need anybody to take notice. I just need to like work it out. And then I just ended up staying.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You look back and like wish you would have specialized in like one position more so, or do you kind of like how your journey panned out?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think it would have been cool to see what I would have become had I specialized in one thing, at least, you know, starting in college. You know, how good of a setter would I have been? How good of an outside hitter would I have been? But at the same time, you know, part of the reason that I stayed in the gym was because I could do all of those things for the national team. And so who knows if I would have been a good enough, you know, just setter to be there or just outside to be there. But, you know, especially in that first year, it was like I had to be able to do all of those things. And so, yeah, I wouldn't like trade it in, but, you know, alternate universe, it'd be nice to see what I would have become.
Yeah. Just a little time heist for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I have a question for you going back to college.
Yeah.
I Jay told me that you, Gabby, and Alex were by far the hardest working class he's ever coached.
Mm.
Is there a reason for that? Like, was it just all of you guys were just that driven to be great from the beginning? Or is there a lot of pressure coming in of like, all right, we have a really good team now, we got to go?
You know, I think it was a few things. I mean, part of it was just we were all very competitive in different ways, but we all were, and so that I think drove us from the very beginning. We got on campus and we were like, we are here to play volleyball and be great, and we want to just keep getting better at that. And so I think individually we each kind of had that drive, and then obviously collectively helped push each other. And then, our sophomore year, after we were losing, those really great players, I think there was probably more, not like a burden on us, but there's more weight on us to then step up and be the ones carrying it. And we'd had a team that had gone to the finals twice. We really, really wanted to win. So our next couple of years were about like how far can we push ourselves in this team now that we're the leaders, to be that level that we want to be at, and get back to that place. And so I think it was a little bit of a combination of things. But what it boiled down to is like we just really wanted to be great volleyball players, and had Gabby less so. I mean, Gabby is just like all heart. Like she will run through a wall for you, So then she just had that in and of herself, and then Alex wanted to be great even beyond Stanford. Wanted to go to the Olympics and become an exceptional volleyball player, which she has. And I probably had a little bit of a mix of both of those things.
I have a personal question for you. I remember, like, for me, when that responsibility was passed on to me, like, it's essentially the same way, like my junior year going forward, and we didn't win a ring. Did you guys feel like failures?
Um,
I know I
I
did.
mean,
I remember I was devastated.
yeah, we were devastated too. I don't know, like failure is a hard word. Like we worked so hard, and I still think our senior year we were good enough to be there and potentially win. Like I think we probably should have had 2 championships, my freshman year and my senior year, and we didn't. And it's also hard being in a place like Stanford where the only goal is to win that last match of the season. Not the only goal, I shouldn't say that, but I knew I had friends at other teams who they went to the Final Four and like got a ring, or they won their conference and got a ring. And at Stanford, it's like championship or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Not that we didn't celebrate the other accomplishments we had, but it's that kind of standard of excellence that is set. Not even, I mean, in volleyball and just in the whole athletic department. And so there was a little bit of a feeling of that where you're like, meh, we didn't achieve what we wanted to. And, just every time we lost at the end of the season, it was just like heartbreak. And particularly the last one, because I think we were so focused. We did everything right, and it just didn't work out in the last match. And so that was really hard. And leaving Stanford, and you're like, God, I didn't get to do what I wanted to do when I came here. And even having gone back and coach, like I did when I went back and coached.
Yeah.
And like it's not the same thing at all.
Damn it. Is it hard? Was it hard moving forward? Like you're a 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old kid, and you did everything you could, and you felt like you did everything right, and it didn't work. Was it hard to like go on with the rest of your life or move forward and be like, all right, I'm still going to keep giving it my all, and hopefully next time it'll work out for me?
Yeah, I mean, what I remember about the end of that last season was like, before I was going on the national team, before I had signed with a club and all of that, it was like, man, what now, right? Like, what do you put yourself into? You just kind of keep going to work out, and So it's a weird kind of transition, but no, I mean, I remember having a coach when I was like 14, and my team didn't do very well at the end, at the like whatever nationals we went to. And my coach from the year before, I saw her and I was really upset about it. We had finished like way worse than we were supposed to, and she's like, "Hey, you can be upset about this, and that's okay, but all you can really do is like figure out what you're going to do better the next time."
Yeah.
And so, I always remembered that, and it's hard in that last one because you don't get to go back for another season in college, and so it's hard to take that and go, okay, am I going to learn from this and then go on to the next thing? But even though we lost, I was so proud of what we had done, the work that we had put in, and just what we had done from the program. When we got to Stanford, there were a lot of just kind of issues and sort of the team dynamic, and we had put a lot of work in that realm too, to go, okay, what do we want this program to look like? How do we want the work ethic to be? How do we want everybody to treat each other? How do we want the communication to be like between us and the coaches? And I felt like it significantly improved in our time there, and so we were leaving it in a better place than we found it. And so as depressed as I was, going to the All-American banquet and all of those things, like I genuinely felt like we had done right by that program, even if we didn't get the ring at the end.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Thank you.
I felt robbed and cheated, so you're a lot more positive than I was.
Matt,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
You're
and
a
then
baby.
like I haven't thought about it before, but like 5 years later, I got cut from the Olympic team, which is like worse because that was an actual end, right? But it's the same thing of like, man, I did what I could, and here we are.
I actually find it's been significantly easier as I've gotten older to rationalize it in my mind of like, I did everything I could and I just wasn't good enough. But at least I can live with that decision, or like I can live with that moment. Whereas, yeah, when I was younger, I was just like, this is bullshit, whatever,
Yeah.
But when you're older, I was like when I got cut from the national team, I was like, I gave it my all. What more can I do?
Yeah. And those were
Peace.
honestly like those were the goals that I set. I remember, and John and I have talked about this. I think it was my freshman spring. We were waiting for a practice or something, and he sat down with me and he's like, "Hey, do you feel like we did everything we could last year to get better? Like every day in practice?" And I was like, I mean, probably not. Like there was probably a day that we could have, worked harder. We could have done more, whatever. Could have been more focused. And he's like, wouldn't that be a great goal if we just came in here every day and tried to get better? And I was like, yes. And I'm transitioning to be a setter, and like tons of pressure because we basically only graduated our setter and made it to the national championship. So like if we didn't, it was kind of on me. So that I really took that to heart, and every day was like, hey, I'm going to come in here and this is probably part of what Jay was talking about. Like, I'm going to come in here and do everything I can to get better today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it the next day, which is exhausting by the end of the season. But it was the same thing when I got to the national team, where I looked at, I think it was, August 6, 2016, when we're going to take off for the Olympics, whoever's going. And I was like, I'm going to be the best volleyball player I can be by that day. And if I don't get to go to the Olympics, it's because I didn't fit into that puzzle that Coach ended up sending. But I'm going to know that I did everything I could. And if I do get to go, then I'm going to know I'm, the best that I can be to contribute to whatever our team does there. And so, after getting cut, it was like, well, I achieved that and I can live with that. Right.
Yeah.
If I couldn't have lived with it, if I hadn't done that, I think it would have been really like damaging. But I was like, well, I gave what I could.
Do you, if you don't mind, it's pretty personal, but I asked Jay, I was like, how do you talk to your seniors or kids when it's the end of the season? Like, what do you say? Do you remember how Karch approached your meeting when he cut you from the Olympic team?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, we did, and this was a choice I think made by our leadership early in the quad, we did rosters by email. So I got an email first. So I knew what was coming. So I knew that I had been cut.
Okay.
And so the meeting was essentially just about like, do you have any questions? And it wasn't mandatory. He was like, if you want to meet. And so I don't even remember exactly what he said, but I think it was just along the lines of like, thank you, for your contributions that you've made. The other thing was they had and this was probably the hardest thing I had to do. So the team was going to Grand Prix, and there were still probably 16 people maybe left, and not all those people can travel. And so there were a couple of people who had to stay and train who were still potentially going to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And he was like, listen, in a couple of weeks, we're going to go to Grand Prix, and we're trying to get people in here to train so that those people can continue getting better. And they had some college kids coming in, and he was like, you don't have, like, 100% no pressure. This won't affect you if you want to potentially come back in the next quad or whatever. But like, if you would like to come back and train with them, we would, we'd love to have you, essentially. And I didn't answer him in that meeting because I was crying, and also was just like, I want this to be over. Yeah. Like, knew already in my head, I was like, God, I'm going to do this. And I'm like a little bit angry at myself that I'm going to do this, but I have to, because, we are like, team slogan or whatever, mantra for that quad was like, we're all in. And for me, I was like, I said I was all in, and that means I'm all in for the duration that it helps this team, not for the duration that it helps me. Like, that was what I committed to. And if there are people who still are going to benefit from me being here for it was like 2 weeks, that I would come back and train, knowing that I was not going anywhere. I was like, I need to do that. And so I told him I'd come back, and I did, and it was rough. But also, a kind of a good way to say goodbye, because I was like, I'm just gonna come in here and play some volleyball. Marv was there, which is fantastic. There you go. And there were all these younger players there who were just being introduced the first time to the national team gym. And when I started out, I was like, I don't want to be the one to have to like, teach them, and like I'm dealing with my own stuff, right?
Yeah.
But so were the people who were going to the Olympic team, and they had their own stuff to deal with. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to be the one that like that does this, that steps up and helps them learn what this gym is about. And so that was the difficult part, I think. But that's what I remember about that meeting, was Coach going, okay, if you feel like you can come back and do this, then we want you back. And Coach and I still have a good relationship. Like, we're fine. I understand the decisions that he made, but yeah, it was like a while before I could like see him and then have a just general conversation again.
Did that 2 weeks help you, like, looking back, did it end up helping you cope with the decision a little bit easier?
I think what it did was I made a really conscious decision where I was like, I didn't know at that point if I was going to go keep playing. I knew that I probably wasn't going to come back to the national team. I thought I might take one more season overseas, but I didn't know. So for me, it was like, these might be my last volleyball practices as a player. And so, I've spent however 15, 20 years loving this game. Now I'm just going to go appreciate that. Like, I'm just going to take these moments and not worry about what I'm working on and not worry about any of these things, but just go out and play, because that's why I fell in love with the game, and that's how I want to go out. And so I think once I kind of shifted to that mindset, it helped me a lot to just be like, I'm going to appreciate these moments, because I don't know if I'm going to, and I ended up not playing that club season, and I'm going back and coaching at Stanford. So it was, technically my last official days as a player.
Pretty nice gig right after. Just walk into a ring. Not bad.
What's funny is I basically, and like John would say this, like I basically told him no. I had no plan, which is like, it's going to piss off so many college coaches who would give an arm and a leg for that job, but I apologize. he called me. I had told him that I got cut, and he called me and I knew he was looking for a coach, and we had talked about it, but we had talked about it like for other people. What it meant that Jay was leaving that job, and what I felt like he brought to it that John needed to think about for the next person. And so he called me I don't know, a week or so after I got cut, and he goes, I want you to do this. And I was like, honestly, I don't think that's what I want. I don't think I want to be a college coach, which shocked many people who I knew. And I had turned down other coaching jobs, and I said, but just because it's Stanford and just because it's you, I'll think about it. And so 3 days later, I call him back and I go, flipped a 180 and was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And, essentially because the reason I had told him probably not was because I knew that I didn't think I wanted to be a college coach long-term. And I didn't want to go for a season and then bail. And he's right back in that spot. And he said it was fine. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And so I was like, well, Palo Alto is a pretty good place to go figure that out. One place where I already know that I love the people. I already know I love the program. I do love coaching. It's just, I didn't think it was my next long-term career path. And it's a good place to figure out if I'm wrong about that and if I do want to coach. And so I called him back and told him I'd do it. And then, walked into this incredible team, and we go and we win a national championship. And then I'm like, cool, good.
So your college coaching career is 100% of seasons coached and national championships.
Yeah, who else is ever going to have that stat? I feel like that one should be written down somewhere.
You're a trailblazer.
Batting 1,000.
How fun was that team to coach? Was it a very, were they just great learners, great people, the whole 9 yards?
They're so fun. I love those kids so much. They, and I mean, people always forget because we ended up winning. We were bad in the beginning. For a Stanford team, we were not good. We lost to teams that I had never lost to in my whole career. And I loved the kids from the start. They were awesome. But man, a month or so in, John goes, hey, how do you feel about this? How's coaching going? And I was like, John, honestly, during matches, most of the time, I'm just annoyed. I know that they're good. And yet on any given night, there's at least 2 of them who are an absolute train wreck. And you never know which 2. We were the most consistent group of kids. And part of it was, we were so young. We were starting 4 freshmen. We didn't have a single person in a starting position who was in that position the year before. We had Inky, who had been out.
Yeah.
We had Maria, who had been a middle, who had been switched to opposite. Ivana, who had been a middle, who was switched outside. And then everybody else was, brand new. And it took them a while to figure it out, but they were always fun to coach. They were always fun to be around, and really genuinely great learners. And one of my favorite parts about that team, everybody gives all the kudos to, Inky and the Inkettes, as they were called at the time. And that class of, Jenna and Morgan and Plummer and Fitz. But our bench was fantastic. And they were, and I've always said this, one of the biggest reasons I thought we won, but they came in every single day, ready to work, ready to learn, ready to push the A side every single day in scrimmages. And we're just so high energy. And I, genuinely feel like that was what prepared us for the end of the season, was them coming in and doing that every day. And then being over the top on the bench in matches, just setting the energy level. Even I'll never forget when we were in Wisconsin for the Elite Eight, and in a packed Wisconsin gym we had 10 fans or whatever it was, and we were down 0-2 and came back, and in that packed place, I could still hear our bench. It felt like we had people there supporting us. And so, top to bottom, that roster was just really, really cool. and ended up being some fantastic volleyball players.
That's so special to hear. And like, it's really hard when you're a player to you recognize it, but sometimes you get such tunnel vision. They're like, all right, it's just us six, it's just us seven that's gonna have to win this game. And then, but when they're that present every single day, it's hard to not acknowledge how great of a bench that you have.
Totally. And we talked about it all the time and did acknowledge it. And it was just all of them. I mean, and then like Morgan Hentz, I mean, what a like crazy talent. And all of those kids brought their own like thing to the table. She is like the most focused player I've ever seen in my life. It's insane how she is ready on every touch of every moment of every practice. And then Jenna Gray, who's like her best friend, who's just like cruising through like super competitive, but just like she's just chilling, which is such a great like vibe to have sometimes, from your setter to be a great leader, but also kind of be so steady. And then the story that always strikes me was Plummer. She started out, people also forget, she started out as a right side for us that freshman year, and we switched lineups like 6 times and we had people get hurt, and so she ended up having to play outside. And Inky told me after the season that she was talking to Plummer one day, right after she had switched to the outside, and she was like up and down like they all were, and she asked Plummer, how's it going? And Plum goes, not great. but I'm gonna get it. And like had that growth mindset. And honestly, if she hadn't, like that was probably the turning point of our season. If she had been like, I can't do this, I can't go being outside, I've never done this before, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. But she was like, nope, like I'm gonna get it. It's gonna take a minute. And obviously she did get it and it worked out. But they all kind of had a little bit of that, where it's like they, as messy as the beginning of our season was, they didn't get kind of discouraged by that and kept working with us and kept trying out new lineups, and together we kind of all ended up figuring it out.
You got to be a hell of a confident 18-year-old to say that.
Yeah. Good kids.
Do you think those characteristics of those kids were, I guess, brought on at Stanford? Like, did they learn that at Stanford, or were those the kids you recruited from high school? Like, they had those characteristics coming in?
I think most of it they had coming in. I think what we helped instill in them was some confidence. I think Jenna was always pretty confident. But I like we had talks. I had talks with Morgan and Plummer both about just kind of staying the course and not getting caught up in whether or not you dug that ball or whether or not you got ace. And so there's some of that, and they just needed to learn some resilience. Like these are kids who have been the best for their whole lives.
Yeah. And
all of a sudden, they're at Stanford, they're not winning, they're supposed to win. And they weren't the best. And so it took a while. And the biggest thing for me, and we talked about it mid-season, was they're particularly that class. There were 6 people in that class. The Keefe twins were in it too, had so much personality. Like when you get a class of 6 and they're like big personality people, that can like take over a team, right? Like the way they go, the team goes. And so, and the class ahead of them was a huge class too. And then you have Inky, who like has a personality big enough for a whole team in and of herself. So there was all of that going on. They're so fun to be around, so fun to talk to, just off the court and in airports and all of that. And I remember stopping them at one point in the season and being like, you guys go out on the court to play matches, and I can't feel any of you. Like it all just kind of like goes small. And you're like, that's not how you are as people. Like when I play, you can see who I am on the court, Yeah. And to me, that's, part of what being an athlete is letting that kind of come through, and they weren't. And so that was the biggest thing to me that they figured out as we went into the tournament, where I was like, okay, like now I can see it. Like now I can feel who you are out there. And they were so much better because of it.
That is an incredible way of saying it. I've never phrased it that way. I've thought of that for sure as a player, where like you get like two things you do when you get quiet is you're either really tired or you're really nervous.
Yeah.
That's the only two reasons people ever get quiet. And like for me, I'm for sure a talker. And anytime I get quiet, I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I'm not tired. So something else must be happening. I must be pretty stressed, you know? But I've never
Yeah.
thought of it the way that you just put it. That's really, really, really well put. I like that a lot. That's awesome. That's good stuff. I'm going to tell my teammates that.
I'm here to help, man.
I'm re-preaching.
Re-preaching.
Cass, what are you up to now?
So a few things. So after my retirement from coaching, after one season, I went out into the world, got a job that was not volleyball. I moved to DC for a couple of years. And then I moved back to California about a year ago. I started my own nonprofit. So essentially looking at like, how do we make kids into better people? And how do we use the sports world to do it? And so like when I look out into the world and see all of the issues that we have, I feel like many of them could be helped if we had some better skills around like, how do I treat somebody else, particularly somebody who's different than me? Oh. And then also like, how do I see myself in the world and kind of my power within it, not just as an athlete, but as I go into any industry. And so I feel like those are explicit skills that we can learn just as we learn how to hit a ball, but we don't spend a lot of time on the fundamentals. And yet we have all of these kids in masses in our gyms and out on fields and all of that, who are kind of a captive audience. So why don't we help teach them some of those skills? And the other thing that we have in sports is the elite athletes and coaches who we're all looking up to, who we want to get insights from. So in combining those two things, I was like, what if we create content that is short enough for coaches to use at the beginning or end of practice, or for kids to watch on their own? It's like 2 to 3 minutes, breaking down some of those skills to, okay, like what are the roots of something like empathy or empowerment or self-confidence, and how can we learn those fundamentals, but learn them through the voice and experience of Steve Kerr, or Kelsey Plum, or Apollo Ono, or somebody like that. So we have those kinds of people who are filming that content for me. And I'm going to have some coming out in a few weeks, actually. We were going to be in like full production mode, but then pandemic hit and you can't like be in rooms with people. Yeah. So I've been doing it via Zoom. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing now. And then I'm, it's called Path. If anybody wants to find it, it's pathsports.org. So yeah, we want to help create better humans. And then I'm also unretiring for a minute.
Yeah, congratulations. Athletes Unlimited gets out of retirement.
I am out of retirement. Like, I don't know what the opposite of a hiatus is, but that's what I'm doing. It's, a 6-week season starting in February. I'm excited about it. It's going to be cool.
What position are you playing?
So theoretically outside, but I genuinely asked them, I was like, so I could play like a different position each week if that was what was best for the team, right? And they're like, yeah, I guess. Like, why not? So you never know, but I'm gonna guess that teams are gonna need passing, so I think I'm gonna be an outside. But yeah, it's 44 players, draft new teams each week. They have the softball league going right now, and it's been cool to watch, and like just how the point system works and all that. So it'll be interesting, like a whole new kind of take on pro volleyball.
Yeah, I've been following the softball a little bit, and I love the structure of it. Like new team each week, and the point structure is really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm excited to see what they do with it, and it's all. I mean, the other reason that I signed on to do it and agreed was, they're very much like a player-led organization, and they want to help players with whatever they want to do off the court. And they're also, legitimate people backing it. And so they have a great network. And so they're hopefully going to help me with some of the stuff that I want to do. And they have like a double bottom line or whatever. So they, as they pay us, some of our bonuses go to whatever nonprofit we want to support. And they have a kind of like civic leadership engagement. So it's just good people trying to promote volleyball and women's sports in the US and give people some opportunities. So we'll see how it goes, but I think it's gonna be cool.
Sure.
And circling back to your nonprofit, how can we follow and support?
Yeah, if you go to pathsports.org, you can like sign your name up or email up and subscribe, and then you'll get the content. And then once we have it coming out regularly, which is going to be in the next like month or so, I think it's just, figuring out how to use it. Like largely what we're trying to do is go, hey, I mean, the content is directed at the kids themselves, or, young people, I'd say college age too, but develop so that coaches who don't have a lot of time can go, hey, how can I spend 10 minutes, like once a week or once every 2 weeks on something that's not, how to hit the ball or how to serve or whatever it is. And things that we feel like are going to be valuable within the sports context, but then also able to practice outside of it. And so I think it's a lot of it's, figuring out as coaches, as people who work with kids, how do we best use this? How do we best get these messages to them? And then encourage them to like take those things. And, we're going to end every bit of content with like, here are the ways that you can actually practice this, as opposed to the sort of blanket, like, be nice to people. It's like when you're in practice today, you can do this. When you're at school tomorrow, you can do this, right? So, I think that's what we're trying to do is just spread those messages and those skills as broadly as possible.
That's awesome. You got a supporter here.
Yep, you got two of them.
Great.
I think everybody's had this idea or concept at some point in time. Hopefully everybody, I don't know, with the way the world is working right now, maybe 50% of people, but nobody's ever been able to put it into words or like into a network like you have. And this is so cool that you figured out a way to like put it together.
That was my thing where I was like, all of the pieces are here. Like you have these youth networks of like masses of children. You have like elite athletes and coaches who are good people and want to do good stuff. You have hopefully a bunch of youth coaches and parents who like want their kids to be good people and good athletes, but also good people. And it's not hard in this day and age to like get content out into the world. So I'm not going to go out and be like, hey, let me build my own network and like hope everybody comes to me. Like, yeah, oh my God. Like, let me write my PDF that you can all read. Like, nobody reads. So, so it's like, let's get like short form, like the short bursts, and get them out to people. And then I'm going to send it out through all of the existing sports networks. So, we have a partner like Art of Coaching is one, right? And so they already have a database of people who theoretically should be interested in this stuff. So rather than wait for everybody to come to me, it's like, how do we build that mechanism and that channel to go, okay, there's a distribution network that already exists. So let's just use it for better things. The advertisers are doing it, right? Like that's how they sell shoes. Like, why don't we use it to like sell humanity?
Yeah. It's like the best prescription possible. Like if you go to the doctor's office and they prescribe something, it's like, be a better human. And this is a way to learn those skills.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in. I am in. Well, Cass, I think we're good here.
Awesome.
You're great. We gotta have you on again. I feel like we say this to every guest. We gotta have you on again.
Yeah, especially once your nonprofit like kind of evolves and goes down the road, we'd love to hear an update.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, subscribe. I just talked to Steve Kerr last week, so we have videos with him coming out, and I'd be happy to come on again.
This is the plug right here. we'll have you on. You can promote to all 400 of our followers.
Yeah.
Hey, by the next time I'm on, you guys are gonna have like 4,000.
That's
Hey,
what I'm talking
that's
about. Positive attitude.
I mean, especially if they're hearing things like this.